obligation to keep them on. So thank you very much. We are closing this. It was very important for us to learn from this project, because there was a lot of us who did not have the a clear idea of the concept of debt advisory, of what we will gain through this project, of knowledge sharing, of not just networking between us, which helped a lot as well, because we formed also networks, but also seeing how others operate, and seeing maybe in which direction we want to take this here. So we have a lot of work ahead still, and this is sort of not really a conclusion. We're just concluding this part of the project, but we still have the bulk of the work coming later. But this will all be very useful. So thank you, Dieter. Sorry I started off so that we can get going, and sorry for the difficulties.
No, it's fine. I was just wondering whether the fault was on my side or on a technical side. Anyway, it's great to have you here again. It's good to see you, and for the first and final network meeting. The situation has improved very much since the beginning of the project, due to the fact that we have now the CCD2, and there is an obligation for each state, and this means for Malta also, to develop and to provide debt advice services and information. And yeah, we are just waiting and looking and offering our support in doing this in Malta. As far as I can see, we have these kind of, let's say, training lessons or information lessons and webinars, and we are now waiting for the final development of your website, including information about debt advice services, and then we have to see what we can do in the next year, because our funding and the grant is at the end of this year, so there will be no money for anything, and we have to look and to see how we get of which resources we can get money for to proceed to make it sustainable. So I'm interested what you are saying today at the last meeting, and Helena and Archie we will see in Brussels, and you will present there with all the other colleagues, and I guess that we'll there get some more insight about the future, what can be done and what should be done. So go ahead, please.
Thank you. So we have the first presentation from FSWS with Maruska, who will start, please.
Good afternoon. Hi, good afternoon to all. What I'm going to talk about today is an overview of the current financial situation faced by families in Malta, most especially by the type of clients we meet on a day-to-day basis, and some recommendations that can help our clients with regards to financial difficulties. So let me share the presentation with you. Okay.
I think we have a lag. Are you seeing it, everyone, or yes, now it's visible.
Yes. Okay, so SFSWS, since a community social work service, we usually face ourselves with different challenges from our clients. Mainly lately, we have been seeing that a good chunk of our clients, although they come presenting themselves with different situations, they end up having financial problems, financial difficulties. Throughout the first quarter of this year, since to October 2023, it was highlighted that the Agency for Community and Therapeutic Services, around 30% of our clients that presented themselves for our community services had initially financial difficulties. Social workers worked also on other cases with financial issues, rather only with these clients. So they present themselves with a different situation, for example, with behavioral issues with regards to their children, but we end up tackling financial difficulties. The purpose of acts is to assist the clients within their own community. We also see a difference between one community and another. Even though Malta is a very small country, we see a huge difference, for example, from clients coming from Valletta to clients coming from Aura Community Services. Despite being the same service, the nature of the clients is different from one to another. Challenges faced by the current system. We recently were envisaging that many of our clients were having some difficulties to access some services. For example, vulnerable clients find it very difficult to seek for services online. When we see that the current system is targeting to move on more digital, our clients find it very difficult to access digital services. Thus, they end up missing their services which they are available to, or they mess up things. They might end up losing their entitlement for such services, which is becoming more challenging for them to access their needs and also their rights. There are also limited services offered after hours. For example, most especially for families, which nowadays the majority of the families work both full-time. Or for example, most especially in our case, we have a lot of single parents who work, they are trying to work and we are striving them to work, but at the same time, they are having difficulty to access the services which are offered during only working hours or otherwise digital. And we go back to the same problem because they don't have the knowledge to access such services. We also envisage that there are a good amount of clients who are homeless and they don't have fixed address, and this limits them for services as well. This also is leading them to have an increase in financial situation. With regards to social benefits, what we were seeing with regards to our clients is that sometimes social benefits take time to be received by our own clients. And most especially when they change from one benefit to another. And this gap might lead them to fall into a trap where they end up lending money so that they survive, and then to recuperate from that money that they lend, they will end up in usury. And unfortunately, this one problem leads to another. Sometimes they take time, months, which is very difficult, most especially in cases where we are having families with no support at all. What we are recently finding out from our clients is that the majority of the clients, unlike when we were younger, families are being less supportive to one another. So they don't have anyone to rely on, most especially when you have individuals who are not in a relationship, or they don't have any siblings, they don't know even their parents. For example, people who came out from institutes, and then when applying for they don't have anyone to rely on. Thus, having this gap to receive benefits, this will be detrimental to them. Sometimes rent subsidy, for example, take long as well to be received by the clients, and this is becoming very challenging, most especially when clients have to change from one residence to another and on a yearly basis. We are all aware that the majority of the contracts given by private landlords are given on a yearly basis, and clients change from one dwelling to another, with all the repercussions of having to change all the ID card, for example, each time. And then even the next point, as you can see, the system is not automatic that when you change the ID card, all the other services are informed about this change in the ID card. And our clients who are vulnerable may end up not informing, for example, the educational, medical, or the tax department. And this will lead them to have further problems with these departments because they don't inform them with their change of address. The system is also very challenging for persons who do not have external support, as I was explaining before, most especially when having young dependents. They end up not having anyone to rely on, and this is becoming very, very, very difficult. Young families are finding it very difficult to save money because both rent, private rent, and even to buy property has increased. Thus, it is becoming very difficult for them, and they are risking to end up in a financial crisis. Obviously, as we all know, financial crisis may lead to having more mental distress, most especially in youngsters who would like to build their own life, but they are ending up being stuck, many of them again with their families, even though they would like to become independent, but they are not affording to do so. I'm going to highlight now some preventive measures to be addressed by entities which we think that they can help our vulnerable clients. Services and systems should not allow clients to accumulate large bills before bringing to the attention that they have bills to pay. We all know that clients should be reliable to pay their own bills. But if we allow the clients to accumulate 3 or 4 bills without paying, it is going to become more difficult for them to pay those bills, rather than bringing to the attention when they have 2 pending payments. Maybe that will be more helpful to start to recuperate from that problem. So these issues should be addressed immediately. Text bills should not be sent, pending text bills should be sent in prior months before, so that the clients will have time to pay their due bills. For example, lately we had a number of clients who received pending tax bills, which needs to be paid. We all know that they need to be paid by November, or else they will have to pay arrears, and this will lead to further problems. So if they have pending tax bills, ideally they should be informed beforehand so that they have a longer amount of time to save in order to pay those due bills. Services offered to help family in need should not be based solely on the income, but also on the dependent number of persons should be considered within the family household. What I'm saying here is that if a service is based on income only, and there are 4 children, for example, who are still dependent on their family, the situation is different for that family than a family who have only 1 child under the age of 16 that is dependent on that family. We are having clients, for example, that they are encountering problems to access services with regards, for example, to Scheme 9. Because they are not on minimum wage, or they are not still dependent on social services, but since they are not on minimum wage, this assistance stopped. And this led them to end up in a financial difficulty because they still have a lot of children dependent on them. Even, for example, for food donations provided by the EU. Fixed obligatory monthly expenses should also be expected.
Maybe if you can explain to Dieter scheme 9, because dak tal kellu tal-iskola. So maybe we can explain to him what scheme 9 is.
Yes, sure, sorry. Scheme
Thank you.
9 is a scheme provided by the Educational Department, where they assist the parents with either the food lunches. They exempt them from school outings. They exempt families from paying the extra hours when they access the club through 3 to 16, which is the club that is offered to parents after school hours. And they also provide assistance with regards to the school uniform. So when all this assistance is not provided to a family, to a mother, for example, who is working full-time, and she is striving her best to provide a good quality of life to her children, who have 4 dependents on her, this is leading her to become very financially distressed because she has a lot of children dependent on her. Thus, this assistance stopped. We are also recommending that fixed obligatory monthly expenses should be considered when assessing services. For example, if one is paying a monthly rent, or a child alimony, or therapy for children, which is mandatory, this should be considered when we are reviewing services to be provided for vulnerable families, rather than focuses only, as I was saying before, on the income, because the majority of the services in Malta focus only on the income threshold. And work benefits should be given monthly, like the tapering of social assistance, and this should be converted immediately once the social assistance stops. We are also encountering clients who we are aware of the tapering system. Helena.
I don't think I may have informed, I'm not sure, but no, maybe you should explain the tapering of benefit. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So the tapering of benefits is given to the clients who started working after they were on the social assistance. And this is distributed on 3 years. And the amount of social assistance is reduced periodically over a 3-year period. And then when this assistance stops, this was given to encourage families, most especially individuals, to go back to the workforce. And then when this stops, families with children dependent on them can apply for the in-work benefit. However, the current system is that in-work benefit is given every 3 months, not monthly like the tapering of social assistance, and this is not given immediately once the social assistance stops. So, when there is that gap between the social assistance and the in-work benefit, our families are facing themselves with financial difficulties. So this might help that this assistance will continue to be given rapidly. We suggest also that there will be extension of after-hour services, most especially for families who work. We are encouraging people to go into the workforce so that ideally they can access services themselves in order to be able to access what they require. Further education from a very young age with regards to priorities in life and family dependence to run a family household should be provided at a very young age, so that children from a very young age would be acknowledgeable how to prioritize, how to finance assistance for the future, how to save money so that they can be more acknowledged, most especially when we are having children being raised in already a vulnerable family. They tend to end up into a vicious circle. So we try to educate them from a very young age what are the benefits of living, of educating yourself, of entering into a good job so that you have an adequate job, and also the benefits of working, because we believe that we still need to work a lot on that. Services should be more efficient and grants should be provided within a time frame in order to avoid from having families missing their monthly payments. What I'm referring to over here is, for example, if we have a family who, for example, the main breadwinner used to work, and unfortunately they end up on sickness benefit due to an accident at the place of work. Ideally, there should be a time frame within the time that this service is provided so that we avoid from having family missing, for example, their monthly payments due to rent or mortgages, so that this will help them to continue with their life as much as possible. Once a social housing accommodation is provided to a vulnerable families or individual, there will be an agreed care plan to be followed in order to avoid from having financial problems. From my previous experience, I used to work at the Housing Authority. We're facing a lot ourselves with families being allocated a social accommodation, but in reality, they are not acknowledgeable of the expenses they are going to enter to. They believe that living independently is much better, and it is in reality, but it comes with at a price because you have to pay the bills, you have to pay the rent, you have to pay the basic necessities, and families, most especially vulnerable families coming from vulnerable backgrounds, they end up entering into other problems in order to strive to live on their own without assistance. In cases where there is a change in income in a major life event, for example, long-term sickness or incidences, there will be assistance provided in order for those families to maintain their mortgages or rent. What I was saying is that there can be a national insurance policy for families that enter into a major life events which weren't foreseen, that they can assist these families in order to continue to pay their mortgages and rent until they improve their life situation again. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been seeing Melanie nod like a rocker, like that when she wasn't even, I was doing this sometimes. So yes. So shall we does anybody want to ask? May have to leave, or shall we start on with Melanie, who I guess this is like your area too, so we're all in agreement, kind of.
Maybe, Helena, I just want to make a comment on what I just heard. This all cries for debt advice. I mean, what Marushka is your first name, I guess. What Marushka explained and told us, this is a typical field for trained debt advisors to cover. And yes, I mean, these are terrible situations for the people. So thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Marushka, were you at the visit we held for MABS, or were you with another group?
Yes,
you were
yes,
there,
I was there.
right?
Yes. That's
Because,
why
sorry, I forgot.
highlighted. Yes.
So so Marushka was with the group from the community projects that I mentioned when we had the second visit to MABS in October. So I had gone there with the DG, sort of it was fact-finding, learning, and we had 2 very full days of taking in information. There was Alexia Vella and myself. And then in October, I was invited to join and introduce those members of the traveling party. There was FSWS and the community projects as lead, and they were there. So they had a taster, I guess, and it was very interesting for them. So thanks, Marissa. That was very interesting, and I really enjoyed it. So you have your points, and we have people from strategy here who are taking down the points as well. Yes. So now we have Melanie. You want to start now with and tell us an overview why you carried out this research, and
Will do. So I think Archibald will be sharing the presentation.
Yes,
so
thank
I
you.
might sound a little bit repetitive, as most of the points that Marushka mentioned has been encountered throughout the research that is about household over-indebtedness in Malta. And it's a qualitative study on why there is the need to have debt advisory services to address household over-indebtedness. And for this research, the perspective of practitioners of community-based family support service agencies was taken. The research was carried out between October 2021 and February 2022. So, and most of the realities that Marushka mentioned, not most of them, but mostly all of them, had mentioned one aspect or more from the realities that Marushka had mentioned just before. Can you change the slide, Archie, please? So a brief introduction. Throughout the coming slides, we'll have a brief introduction. We'll go over the study's objectives and the questions, the methodology and the research methods used, and subsequently we will review the research findings, their analysis and the recommendations. So, as you might all know, I've been working within the social non-governmental sector for the past 12 years, and we have observed an increasing alarm of households falling into debt and facing financial difficulties. Unfortunately, as it was highlighted in the Eurofound 2020 report, debt settlement systems and debt advisory services are lacking in Malta. This research explores the causes and the impact of household over-indebtedness in Malta. It proposes recommendations for implementing debt settlement procedures and advisory services to address the presenting issue. Can we change, please? So the research aims to enhance understanding of over-indebtedness in Malta, identify practical solutions, and provide recommendations to policymakers to improve the well-being of individuals and families affected by these issues. Based on the research aim, the study sets the following objectives. The first objective is to provide a literature overview on household over-indebtedness in Malta and its relation to the current situation of poverty. The second objective is to determine whether practitioners of community-based family support service agencies have a shared understanding of what is meant by household over-indebtedness. The third objective was to identify the causes of household over-indebtedness in Malta. Subsequently, we want to identify the difficulties over-indebted people encounter in understanding and accessing the current range of public social welfare services. Lastly, the last objective was to identify what strategies are needed to be adopted at a national level to prevent and manage household financial fragility. The choice of research objectives was driven by the need to understand and address the challenges faced over-indebted households in Malta. By exploring the experiences and the perspectives of practitioners, the study sheds light on the existing support services. The research objectives are designed to contribute to developing policies and interventions to alleviate financial burden on vulnerable households and promote financial stability and well-being. The research focused on three main questions. So, what causes household over-indebtedness in Malta? The research question directly addresses enhancing the understanding of over-indebtedness in the Maltese society by identifying the causes of household over-indebtedness. The second question was, what do practitioners working in community-based family support service agencies consider as lacking in the current public system to support those at risk of household over-indebtedness? By exploring the practitioner's perspective, the research identified gaps and deficiencies in the current public system, providing valuable insights to policymakers to address these shortcomings and enhance the support services available to those at risk of household over-indebtedness. And the last question was of how could public debt advisory services alleviate the risk of households becoming over-indebtedness? This research questions aligns with the intent to identify solutions to improve the well-being of over-indebted households by examining the potential of public debt advisory services. The research explored how such services can provide guidance, support, strategies to help individuals and families manage their debt effectively and prevent them from sliding into over-indebtedness. So, as previously mentioned, the qualitative research approach was chosen to gain an in-depth understanding of the complex nature of household over-indebtedness through the experiences of the practitioners. The chosen methodology facilitated the exploration of the research objectives and provided a comprehensive understanding of the phenomenon. Interviews allowed a direct engagement with the practitioners, providing rich and refined insights into their perspectives and experiences. The methodology aligned with research exploratory nature, as limited existing research focused on household over-indebtedness in Malta was available. Judgmental sampling was employed to select practitioners based on their expertise and experience in family support services. The sample included practitioners from government and non-governmental organizations. 10 one-hour interviews, one-to-one interviews with practitioners were conducted, and then an in-depth semi-structured interview approach was adopted to allow the practitioners to discuss their experiences.
Melanie, there's a question, I think, from Dieter at this point in the chat.
Yes. Let me see.
Yeah, I was just wondering because the first speaker talked about financial services,
I think
financial support welfare services, and you are talking about financial support services agencies. So, what is it the same?
Family support service agencies are community agencies that work with families at community level. FSWS is the agency, the governmental agency that supports covers a large area of social support services, from which there is the ACTS. Marushka, it's the community. Can you understand ACTS?
Yes. ACTS is Community and Therapeutic Services.
And they also work at community level. So the research was focused, taking a sample from government organizations like ACTS that falls within FSWS, and non-governmental organizations like the St. Jean Antide Foundation, that is a voluntary organization and also works on the same remit at community level.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. So the analysis and the research findings provided valuable insights on the research topics, and in the following slides we will discuss the results in more details. Can we change the slide, please? So the research aimed to assess whether practitioners at community-based family support service agencies have common understanding of the term household over-indebtedness. The European Commission does not provide a specific definition of household over-indebtedness, but refers to various definitions and approaches used at national authorities. This could lead a variation in the data comparability across countries. The results of the research indicated that 4 out of 10 participants could give a substantial explanation on the term household over-indebtedness. 2 participants provided a vague answer when asked about their understanding of the term. The remaining 4 participants did not define the term, but instead listed examples of what causes and constitutes household over-indebtedness. This results indicates the need of a specific definition at European level to enable effective comparison of data sets. They would allow practitioners also to identify red flags and implement strategies as a preventive measure, not when the households are over-indebted. Practitioners also agreed that the household unit should be the primary measuring factor to measure over-indebtedness due to the complex dynamics and interdependence within the household members. The Association of Consumer Rights Malta in 2029 also made a research recommended adopting the household as the measurement unit for consumer protection and household indebtedness. The research findings. Thank you. The research findings provided valuable insights into the causes of household over-indebtedness. The analysis of the research findings revealed multiple interconnected factors contributing to household over-indebtedness. Measures were taken to ensure the reliability and validity of the research, aligning with existing literature and expert perspective. In this case, the risk factors of over-indebtedness identified by Botto Ferreira in 2021. The impact of financial crisis and cost of living was attributed as a significant contributor to household over-indebtedness. Low-paying jobs, inadequate minimum wage, and limited social benefits contributed to financial difficulties. The research showed that over-indebtedness is linked to the lack of affordable housing as well. The research shows that impulsive financial decision-making and the inability to prioritize between needs and wants contributed to over-indebtedness. Instant gratification and the pursuit of temporary happiness through spending can worsen debts. The research also showed that insufficient financial literacy hinders from decision-making and effective money management. Also, technological advancements are increasing the digital divide, thus vulnerable people who are becoming financially illiterate as they cannot adapt to these fast-changing trends. This was also mentioned by Mariska about one of the difficulties that most of them do encounter. 7 participants mentioned that individuals often make quick decisions without considering the potential financial difficulties they may face in the future. This behavior is linked to poor budgeting skills and impulsivity. The interconnection between factors can be clearly seen when it comes to intuitive heuristics and reason biases and the depleting effects of poverty. All participants mentioned the intergenerational nature of vulnerability, where children from certain social classes adopt unhelpful attitudes, behaviors, and mindsets related to finances. Adverse life events such as job loss and illness significantly impact household finances. Mental health conditions were also mentioned as contributors to financial illiteracy and poor financial management. Apart from these risk factors, the research identified that the one-size-fits-all measure approach and the lack of preventive measures were a leading cause of over-indebtedness in Malta. Participants expressed frustration in the inflexible nature of these measures, which they believe contribute to the households becoming over-indebtedness. And I think it's a shared feeling with what Marushka has been stating before. The reliability of these findings is supported by the consistency of the responses from multiple participants, with common themes emerging throughout the interviews. The measure's validity can be attributed to the direct insight and the experiences shared by practitioners who work closely with individuals experiencing household over-indebtedness. Can we change slide, please? Various support services were mentioned throughout the interviews, but all participants highlighted how the absence of debt advisory services created a void in providing holistic social support services. The research results confirmed that the Eurofound report stated the lack of debt advisory services in Malta. Various flaws were mentioned, especially the need for a holistic approach, and that the current support services often treat causes of over-indebtedness independently, and that they do not consider the interconnectivity of one factor with another. There needs to be more consideration on the broader picture. The services focus on short-term solution rather than addressing the root causes. Support services should focus on the individual's well-being, not just their financial situation, and they should all adopt a compassionate and understanding approach. The European Consumer Debt Network acknowledges that debt advice is widely used across European countries to tackle over-indebtedness. Debt advisory services assist in understanding the causes and implementing targeted intervention to help prevent and alleviate the burden of over-indebtedness in households. An effective support service is essential to reduce stress, anxiety, insecurity, and financial strain. Trained debt advisors should deliver debt advisory services. Regretfully, the research shows the need of more current training opportunities in debt advice as well. Can we change the slide, please? So the practitioners mentioned various preventive and curative measures that could ease the burden of household over-indebtedness. And so early intervention, as also was mentioned by Maruska previously, through financial literacy programs introduced at a young age, was frequently mentioned as a preventive measure. Providing financial literacy courses to couples starting to live together who struggle was suggested to promote independent finances and shared expenses. Accessible sexual education and contraception was recommended to prevent unplanned pregnancy and related financial challenges. Practitioners often mention the need of proactive approaches by service providers to notify users about outstanding bills before they accumulate. Learning from the French legislation on early detection and promote could be adopted. Improvement in legislation, including debt settlement system, protection of vulnerable individuals, review of debt inheritance, capping on interest and fines, and standard rental rates were suggested as curative measures. Participants recommended an increase in the minimum wage rate and revising the difference between social welfare benefits and the minimum wage to motivate low-skilled individuals to enter or re-enter the job market. Practitioners emphasize the importance of having a humanistic approach, focusing on personalized support rather than computer-based systems. Developing practical ways to teach financial literacy and providing support to the entire household were also considered essential. Can we change? Thank you. Based on the findings, it can be concluded that the qualitative responses gathered through one-to-one interviews with social workers and social mentors have provided valuable insight into the thematic areas of familiarity with the notion of over-indebtedness, causes of over-indebtedness, support services, and preventive and curative measures. The need for a standard definition of household over-indebtedness arises from the lack of consistent understanding and awareness of the term among practitioners. The study reveals the complexity of factors contributing to household over-indebtedness, emphasizing that it is often a combination of multiple circumstances. The findings highlight the difficulties and barriers vulnerable over-indebted households face in accessing appropriate welfare support services, revealing flaws in the current system. The study emphasized insufficiency and inefficiency of support services, bureaucratic processes, lack of awareness about poverty and financial issues, and the need of enhanced training, resources, and tools, urging for realistic policy recommendation to address these shortcomings and improve the support provided to over-indebted households in Malta. Participants stated the importance of preventive measures and the need to be more flexible and accessible support services to over-indebted households. The practitioners believe that introducing proven measures can help households manage debt effectively, but these need to be introduced to debt advisory services to ensure achieving financial stability and well-being. Some recommendations that were highlighted from these research, which shows that household over-indebtedness is a growing global concern impacting millions of families. Some of the recommendations are the need to advocate for a European Union-wide definition of household over-indebtedness, the need to change the national minimum wage to a national minimum living wage, establish standards for private fee-paying debt management companies, advocate for revision of methods used by local key corporate service providers to recoup overdue bills, introduce a legislation concerning personal insolvency and debt settlement procedures. The need to establish debt advisory services to provide assistance, advice, training for debt advisors according to the current frameworks. This goes hand in hand with setting a framework of over-indebted household to access credit through reputable sources. Sustain the service provided by the community-based family support service agencies, whether being governmental or non-governmental. The introduction of financial literacy in the national curriculum of the educational system, and the collaboration between stakeholders and policy makers is crucial to implement these recommendations. So lastly, the research shows the dedication and the commitment of the practitioners interviewed. It reinforces the belief in the importance of public debt advisory services and gives us hope for collective action and future resource research. We are grateful of the proactive measures adopted through the Ministry of Social Policy and Children's Rights in response for the concerning findings of the Eurofound report when it was brought to their attention. In fact, they have joined the PEPPI project, and throughout it was a journey through the foundation and us throughout this research project. And we are also looking forward for future developments derived from the Consumer Credit Directive. So I don't know if there are any questions. There's lightning over here.
Yes, maybe winter will start finally.
Yes,
thank you.
Melanie,
yes,
can you
please.
just say, I guess you know it all in Malta, what you mean by private fee management companies?
So you foresee that eventually there will be some private debt advisors, but we should be proactive and set standards prior to having private debt advisors mushrooming all around, and we don't know what standards and...
Okay, thank you. And then I have another question about the risk factors of over-indebtedness. There was one factor you mentioned about, let's say, perception of their situation. It was one below in your circle. And can you just say some words about this?
Can you repeat?
You know, you have these different risk factors in your chart. And there was one risk factor which was about perception, I guess, of the debt by the debtors.
It was the intuitive heuristics and reason bias, I think.
This one.
The one in the bottom, the 6 o'clock one.
Yeah, intuitive, yes, and reasoning bias, yeah. What does it mean precisely? Yeah.
Basically, because some people, most of the time, they could jump into conclusions before. Normally, people can come to a decision quickly, taking the right approach. Sort of subconsciously, they take some decisions without reading a lot of thinking about it. But people with maybe don't have enough financial literacy and financial budgeting, they can jump into conclusions without considering the effects of financial difficulties they might encounter because of that conclusion they have taken. For example, this is we see it very often when they contact somebody through usury because due to lack of access to credit, because they feel that they have no other option, and the situation will escalate to a never-ending spiral downwards that there's nearly no way out unless you seek support.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Can we receive your presentation for putting it on our ECDN website?
Yes, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
And then we will be sending both of the presentations, if that's okay for you, Mariska, to all the participants. I think sure. we can do that as we always do.
And then the last question from my side is your publication already now? Is it now finished? Because I know that I received one prior version of it. And
from the university, they should publishing the paper in February, hopefully. I'll keep you updated.
So do we have any other questions? I know that Maruska now has to fly in the rain and to pick up her daughter.
Yes.
So we've got quite, and thank you for participating, because we're all right now, Dieter, and I think maybe it could be the same for you. We all have conferences and strategies and launches. So we've had something else this morning, and Maruska
Yes.
and I were at the same event. And there was somebody else as well, Denise, who was also participating and was, but she wasn't with our visit to MABS, but she is also a part of this and giving us feedback. So we're all really busy, and I'm very grateful to you, Dieter, for giving us the opportunity to participate, and to Archie, who has been helping out very, very much with all this, and to all of you, especially to Melanie, Marushka, Denise, who's not here, all of the others. You know, we have Active Aging, who have also been very supportive, Caritas, Agencia Support. We're very grateful that everybody is on board, and hopefully they will take everything that we have gained from the project and from our own networking and implement. I am trying to push from my side. Everybody is trying to push. So finally we will have a service, you know, starting with a pilot and then expanding and seeing something really effective to on the ground.
Perfect. Great. Yeah, congratulations and thank for your engagement, for your continuous engagement, Helena and Archie, which we very much appreciated. And yeah, let's see what the future will bring. You know, we are still there, and we will do a kind of policy support for the governments. And I guess in Malta, the Ministry of Finance is the responsible one for doing this, or is it your ministry, Helena?
Let's put it this way. This directive, the remit, has been split. And I think with the debt advisory, maybe it should be ours. But then there are so many other aspects to the financial side and to the sort of the consumer side that also pertain to other remits. So there is the MCCAA, who did not participate, but they were always invited, who I believe was the first point of contact for this directive. And they have sort of the purely consumer side. Then for financial institutions, there will be the MFSA, which falls under the Ministry for Finance, which is the Malta Financial Services Agency, I believe is the name of the acronym. And then hopefully with the debt advisory, that would be us. And we have some meetings which are supposed to take place, and you know, financial capability is not just us. That is an element of the directive, but it is, and it should be, everyone's. So that will be sort of more of a group of stakeholders who share this remit.
Okay, thank you for the information. Yeah, good luck to anybody, and you know, enjoy the coming pre-Christmas time, and we will see each other anyway in more than a week in Brussels. So
yes, we look forward to that. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Especially our lady speakers. Thank you, and to you, Dieter, Archie. Thanks, colleagues.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks.
bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Good day.
Bye.